Hey everyone, I'm super excited to be speaking to Simon Kane. Simon is a brilliant writer and performer whose work ranges from devised and ensemble theatre to new writing, solo shows, audio work, and from comedy to Shakespeare. Simon, welcome.
Hello. I've never actually written any Shakespeare. But
Well, but performed in.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I've just been trying to re-edit on this phone the stuff I did in lockdown, projects where I was reading the whole thing, but the phone doesn't have quite enough memory. I want to make sure, in case YouTube ever suddenly falls to pieces, that I have everything I put on there in other versions. And I also thought to explain, during lockdown, I did an actor weekday. That's a bad way to explain it, isn't it, Ben? I read an act of a play a day for a week, intending to do the complete works of Shakespeare a week at a time. And I got 4 plays in, and then I came back for another play and didn't like it, so I did that again. And basically, yeah, I didn't achieve playing every character in Shakespeare, but I'm very, very proud of some of the work they did. I really love the Titus. I really love the Julius Caesar. And I'm thinking of coming back to it as well. I stopped because things were opening up and because I was doing the histories, and Rich II goes into Henry IV, which goes into Henry V, and I didn't really feel like doing Henry V at the time. And also, I realised recently, another reason I did it was I didn't know how to do Falstaff, and I've worked out, because I have to choose lots of different voices, and it did just have to be big voice choices, and I realised I'll do what I did for Petruchio, make him Australian. Yeah.
What made you choose that as a lockdown project?
So I'd started, the project was, I've always been interested in YouTubing, and then in lockdown, a lot of my friends were suddenly making stuff. Like John Finnemore was doing stuff as Arthur from Cabin Pressure, and Carrie Quinlan was doing stuff with Andy Stanton. And that was one aspect of the decision. Another was, as lockdown started, I thought, I'd really want to read Daniel Defoe's Journal of the Plague Year, and then I realised I had that in the flat. And I started reading it, and it was really interesting. And I thought, I can read that on YouTube. I'll read like 10 pages a day, and that'll be me reaching out to people on YouTube. And I really enjoyed that. I really like that. A discipline's too strong a word, structure. And already I have a blog, and for some reason, at the end of the previous year, I decided this time I'm really going to post a thing a day, which should never be the discipline before. And then we went into lockdown. It's like, great. And so that was also provided the blog was a place where I could then post an episode and a little explanatory thing. And then I got to the end of Journal of the Plague Year and thought, I'm really enjoying this. I'll do another book. And it had to be out of copyright. Didn't have to be out of copyright, but I kind of thought.
Preferable.
Yeah. And then I suddenly thought, there's no theatres. I haven't done Shakespeare in a while. I'll do the complete works of Shakespeare. And I have, which I won for a competition. I can't remember exactly what it's called. It's the Oxford University Press, I think, which makes some controversial decisions, such as Falstaff's not actually called Falstaff. They call him John Oldcastle. So I quite look forward to being the first actor to play John Oldcastle in a while. They've got a giant magic cat in Macbeth, and it's got 2 King Lears. And I've got this book. I'll perform the complete works of Shakespeare chronologically as he wrote them, and I realised I'd get to the Tempest if I'd done that by Christmas, and I started reading 2 Gentlemen of Verona and really enjoyed it, and then.
And you think you're going to get to the end one day, or you're going to do more?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, what was great because it was lockdown, there were no theatres, so it would have been a project that would seem. I'm not sure I believe in stupid hubris anymore. But it would this actor's going to do the complete works of Shakespeare. But if there's no theatre going on, it made more sense. But I'm so pleased with the stuff I did, and it's so for some people, some of the people who saw it, and that's very few people. It was their first introduction to this play. And I think they're good introductions. I thought I try to make sense of it, and it's good for me as well to have come up with a version of a play that to me makes sense, where I know why everyone's doing what they're doing, and
Yeah, they're fun.
and that you approach, and it doesn't seem frightening. Like, people know, I've prepared this in the morning, I've shot it, I've edited. I mean, one of the reasons I stopped doing it again was it was just taking up every waking hour. So by the time I got to Tame with a Shrew already, if I was actually going to do it chronologically, I would have gone on to the histories. So I thought, well, I'll save the histories and do those separately. Yeah. So then I got to Titus Andronicus, and by the end of that, I was so tired. I thought, I can't continue this. I'll head on to Julius Caesar, which was a play I was interested in, and then stop. And that's a season. That's 4 Shakespeare's. That's a season, and then come back to it later. Then when I tried to do I tried to look at the Henry VI's part 1, 2, and 3, which are plays I love, but there are a lot of characters in there
and that's
a lot of them talk quite similarly, and especially the first one is, I think, a big spectacle. So without all the battle scenes and explosions, it's a much harder it's a much harder thing to do. If you do like Twelfth Night, the characters are really well defined and you can have fun playing all of them. But also, history, people keep changing their names because they win and lose titles. So Richard II is quite handleable because there's 3 or 4 characters in it, and also every time I do a new act, I say the story so far, and also usefully offer some content warnings and explanations of the stuff, and also all the melanin hatred you keep coming across. You just go, this is going to turn up, and don't make an excuse for it, but it's good to warn people of it, because you don't want people to go, watch Shakespeare and suddenly feel like they've been mugged.
It's good to make it accessible, and I think there was a tradition even at the time of essentially throwing around your troupe of players. They had a day to rehearse, and then they just put it on that evening. So there was a lot of that. I'm kind of interested in your overall process, but maybe through the lens of this project, about what's your starting unit or starting point? Do you tend to like character or an image, a line?
Starting point for what?
For getting into putting on the piece or performing somewhere. Like, is it through image or line and speech? Is it through character? Or there's a lot of talk about directors nowadays from the US school about everything has got to be action and want and things like that. So I'm kind of interested in how you mix together all of those things.
I do different things, so it's not all the same process. I've never really directed anything.
But you're directing yourself in this piece in a way.
Yeah, but I don't. I mean, I'd happily go, I am directing, but that's not directing.
Yeah.
If you're not doing it to someone else, that's not directing. It's like, but it's like all writing is kind of improvisation as well. At some point, you're improvising it, and then you're recording it, and that's how I worked in devised theatre. Often we'd be improvising stuff, and I'd be the one to go and write up my memory of it, then bring that in, and everyone else could go, no, there's this, and at least there was a text there to turn to use however everyone wanted to use it. But I guess I still don't. I make things in different ways. So I guess I don't know what you're asking me about.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess for this project, because we'll come on to the Shunt.
For full Shakespeare, yeah.
Because we'll come on to the Shunt work.
Yeah.
I'm interested, perhaps, when you're getting into Shakespeare, you're going to perform Shakespeare or a play where you have a written text and there's characters. So we are defining it down.
Yeah.
Do you, and maybe, obviously you'll listen to the director and things, but before the director or the work you're doing alongside the director, do you approach that from a very character-driven, let's get inside the head of a character?
I approach it from a story.
A story.
Way. So I think the two main focuses for me, not as a manifesto, but just the thing I do is the story, and the normal story things of like that. What's your motivation?
So it is a motivation. Yeah.
Well. I mean, another way to put it is, what are you pretending?
Yes. Well, that is slightly different though. But
How?
yeah. Well, because a motivation could be just your simple want. But if you're pretending, that's a kind of projection of what you or whatever you want to pretend. But it might not be the same as your.
But how is it different? Give me an example.
Well, you could come across, I guess, as pretending to be beautiful or pretending to be ugly. So that's the
I
thing.
see.
But you are, but you're
But
wanting to do
okay,
something.
so I don't think in those terms at all.
Yeah,
You can't.
you're coming
You
through
you
character.
can't.
Well, I guess
How
some
do you
people would say.
pretend to be? I mean,
Well,
no,
some
no,
people
that,
do it
that,
completely
sorry, I didn't mean
outside
that doesn't
in.
make
Yeah.
sense. Sorry, I'm talking over you. But I mean, you can. Yes, your self projection is a thing, but you're doing it in character, I guess. I think. Actually, yeah. I guess a lot of the work I have hasn't really relied on me finding a character, because it is so much about my interaction with the audience or my interaction with the story, and it's just so. And I think actually, now you bring it up, one of the wonderful things about doing full Shakespeare was I could really, really do characters, and immediately play people who weren't me. So you're right. You're right to make that distinction.
Yeah, I guess this is because I probably want to go and start with the Shunt work and then come forward to this time. And this is obviously taints everything in a really simplified bucket. But you could say that some people would approach something purely from get inside the head of the character, and from the character play, pretend, or however. The extreme, which you may not think works or not, is I'm not going to think about the character at all. I will just dress up like this character, everything on the outside, clown, nurse, or something. And from that external point of view, everything might flow. And then you have potentially a third blob of work, which is where you don't have a text or anything to working from, and you're working with a bunch of other people. And from that, and then I'm interested, what might be the thing from flows from that. And it's interesting when you're working with a text from Shakespeare, you kind of think, well, I can get inside and think about a character and do that. And so that's why I was interested about coming to that, and how that might contrast for when you're devising work or doing ensemble work, when you might not have a script, or you're trying to do the script, or you're making the script, and how that all works.
Yeah, so I've got a few things to put a pin into. For the Shakespeare, I think it's the absolute best illustration of that for me is the fact that I did 2 Richard II's.
Mm-hmm.
So when I came back to it, I thought I'll start with the histories, and by the time I got to like the 5th act, I was like, I still don't get this play.
Yeah.
I still don't. I'm making and putting something out, which is a story that I don't understand what the story is, and I thought, and I think round about Act 4 when I was recording, I thought, well, what's one of the things we know about Richard? We know that Elizabeth I saw Richard II and thought, that's me, and I thought, well, I'm definitely not playing that. I am giving a very naturalistic, slightly oddball, because I lean into the oddball nature of myself when I do Shakespeare, and I've a lot of experience of doing Shakespeare when I was young, and it was really nice to be playing that kind of. I might be using this phrase wrong, Sigma male, but like the Jaques and the Lucio, and then Hamlet, like the underminers, the outsider intellectuals. I really and who don't fit in but have their own authority, and that's how I've been playing Richard II, and that's how I often see Richard II played. And I thought, but that doesn't make sense. That's not who. If you look at Elizabeth I, did I say first or second? I mean Elizabeth I. Like, there's a very clear icon there, and I was thinking, I'd seen photos of Ian Richardson. I thought, well, what if I play Richard II as Ian Richardson, complete, full old school, absolutely delivering every line like you love the poetry, like it's a proper performance. And I thought, I'm going to redo Richard II, but with a completely different characterization of Richard II, and that changed the whole thing. And it made sense to me by Act 4 of this second one. I realized I'm Thatcher. This is I'm playing, amongst other things, and I'm also Norma Desmond, because we don't really have a concept of majesty, but we know what a fallen star is. And Richard II was as a story about a fallen star, but a story about someone who absolutely was the thing they projected themselves at, and then loses that because it's built on nothing, and then has nothing to replace it with. That changed the play and also changed how every other character behaved, and it suddenly became a story I understood what I was telling, and that was specifically because I changed the characterization of Richard II. And similarly, when I came to
and I'm just going to pick on that.
Yeah, yeah.
And that makes sense to me now that you say it's story first, because from understanding the story, the character changed, and from the character, everything else changed to make sense of the story.
Yeah.
Whereas you could have gone, I mean, someone could have gone the other way. It's like, I'm just going to make sense of the character, and then whatever story comes out of that comes out of that. But you weren't satisfied, because the first time around you had a character, but it's like, when I play this character, the story doesn't seem to make sense to me anymore. So I think that's a really interesting way of approaching it.
Yeah, and you know, that's why talking about character and motivation and story are interlinked. But often, especially with a well-worn text, especially with part of the canon, I will see productions where it doesn't make sense. So I don't understand what the story is, because the characterization doesn't. But with the great classics, you can change what a character is and still tell a different story. And I think Hamlet's the best and worst example of this. I've seen so many Hamlets that work so well.
Yeah, great character
for the first act, and then come the second act, it's like, but why isn't he killing Claudius?
Yeah.
Like there is this huge gap in Hamlet where I think you have to you have to know you have to tell the story of why Hamlet then doesn't kill Claudius.
Yeah.
And it's not, well, because he's pretending to be mad. Why is he pretending to be mad?
Yeah.
And I think it's so great to be told a story, and it becomes, you know, there can still be lots of great stuff. But I'd also like Polonius. What's going on with Polonius? I mean, that's the great thing. One of the great things about Shakespeare is just there are stories there if you want to.
Yeah, and what's the story we're telling?
And one of the reasons I'm so proud of my Julius Caesar is I'd always sensed this version of Cassius and Mark Antony. I loved the character of Cassius. I loved how right he was about everything and how he kept deferring to Brutus, because he also knew that he was a hothead. He also knew that he was not a born leader, and that dooms them. And I'd always wanted to play that. And then when it came to Mark Antony, I don't know why I sort of, is bloviating the right word? Sort of Boris Johnson-y him. I don't know. It was just, he had a very few lines in the first act, but they were so obsequious to Caesar. I thought, just go boom. And then by the time you get to his oration to the Romans, I love doing that so much, even though it's such a sort of classic scene. It was just playing a total populist as a total populist without any. And when you play as charming, I could, this is really what you were talking about, but yeah, it was so. It just felt so good to be getting it.
And let's contrast that then. So do a little potted history. There was a collective called Shunt, which I think was one of the most influential theatre collectives, call it almost movement, particularly within the London theatre scene, and so arguably global. And you did a lot of work with Shunt, and a lot of their work comes from an ensemble basis, although often does use a director, but doesn't have to. And we can talk about how ensemble works differently. But often when you start, there isn't a written text. There might be one by the end. So that's quite different from doing Shakespeare. And you might not even start with some characters, but you might do. And I was looking at some clips because I still remember, I don't actually remember the details very well, but I definitely remember the feeling of Dance Bear Dance.
Yeah.
All the way back then. So I'd be interested in...
Did you see the one with me in?
Yes, I think I saw it twice. I saw it Archers and with your one.
Rio,
yeah, because it was so extraordinary for the time. So I'm going to let you talk a little bit maybe about your experience of that, and then relate it back to making work. So we just talked about Shakespeare and going through story and then into character and then performing. And then you've got this whole other way of working. And so we contrast them. Obviously it's performing, but you start ensemble. You might not even start with much more than an idea or a character, and then you produce this other kind of work. So why don't you talk about that?
And that's the other thing I want to put the pin in, because for me there's the really interesting journey for me was, even before I was working with Shunt, I knew Shunt through Gemma Brockis, who I knew at Cambridge, And towards our last years at Cambridge, we started working with a guy called Jeremy Hardingham. So the journey for me is like, at the end of my first year at Cambridge, I played Hamlet, and with an amazing company. And then I watched, it was an amazing company, but not a nice experience. I thought, well, I played Hamlet, unless there's touring or unless a friend wants me in something, I don't really want to act anymore. And Jeremy Hardingham asked me to be in King Lear, and I said, I don't want to do King Lear. And I saw his King Lear, and it wasn't like how I had imagined putting on Shakespeare before. Like, full Shakespeare was great because I was in charge of everything. This was not about casting actors who have a really interesting take on the character and bringing them all together and telling the story. This was a completely different kind of piece of theatre, but it was absolutely King Lear, and there were brilliant actors in it. But there were also performances that on their own might be seen as quite wooden, but weren't about people pretending to be that character. And it was, excuse me, it was just a phenomenal room to be in for 3 hours where this thing was happening. And then I started working with Jeremy. We did a thing. We did a version of Midsummer Night's Dream, which I loved being in. But this type of theatre, and then I've been making work with Gemma ever since. But this kind of theatre made me usefully self-conscious about just playing a character and what else an actor does in a company on stage. And when I watched Shunt's first show, Shunt's second show actually, The Ballad of Bobby Francois, which was quite a silent piece, quite a clown show, all the performances were great, but they were not really playing characters. And similarly, a lot of this devised stuff, immersive or installation, it wasn't about seeing someone play another character. It was just about someone interact with an audience. And so I became really... I saw that the thing I wanted to learn to do was absolutely just deal as myself in character with an audience and with a situation, but not present a character that was an interpretation of someone from a story. And that's what went into when I did my solo sequel to the Shunt work, Jonah non grata. It wasn't about I'm presenting my characterization of Jonah. It's about what is this person doing on stage? What are they trying to be? How are they interacting with an audience? It wasn't about me putting on a voice or doing stuff like that. And in terms of the ensemble, I made a piece with Gemma where I played two very different characters, and that was an adaptation inspired by the book Invitation to a Beheading. And a lot of Shunt's works are inspired by the books. There's always some kind of text, but then you improvise scenes within the situations in those texts. And I think normally when you're improvising, it's normal anyway to improvise without actually coming up with a character. It's about the situation and the back and the forth. And so I played two very different characters. I was a nervous lawyer and then a sort of weird surrealist alpha male executioner. But I used my own voice of that. It was just, the situation was different. And the look was very, very different. If you put on a costume to be a person, you still need a mirror. Otherwise, you don't know what you're wearing. It might help you stand or move differently. But I think I have at least those two strings to my arrow, if that's the metaphor. But being present with other actors and with an audience in a space and interact with that, and also going away and finding a character and doing the whole Antony share thing, which I loved growing up, like seeing him draw the characters he was going to be and then transform into that. I think the visual aspect is really, really important, and also fun.
And how did you make decisions within the ensemble? So you're improvising, you're going back and forth, people are playing however they're playing, all the scenes developed. How does a group of people then decide this is the most interesting way forward, this is the best way forward, there is no way forward, let's argue about this for a while? How do decisions within a rehearsal room start to form? Can you articulate that?
Yeah, although as an associate artist, I would never be involved at the very beginning of a process of a Shunt show. So by the time I would come on board, there would always
Some of
be
it's
a
done.
set.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the set is the text. What Lizzie Clacken designs and what
So
the
your space,
collective
yeah.
and the basic idea, which can change, that the collective has of the audience's journey through that space or just within that space, is already in place. And the text is already in place. The one slight exception to this was Tropicana, where I came in mid-run. And so there was already a show there. But when I came in as the lift operator, I was allowed to rewrite my stuff, and that rewriting inspired other people like Hannah to rewrite their bits. And yeah, I could work on everything I did. And it was really useful to have a show in place and for me to be allowed to come in and go, oh, I think this might work and do this. And so there's always some kind of thing already there when I come into a Shunt show, and then it really varies. It's always down to the wire, at least down to the wire. So we never really
or even
rehearse
post
a
the
show.
wire.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But like,
is the
we
work
will
ever
do a
finished?
technical
Yeah.
run of the show, but we're never gonna really rehearse it or do a scene. It's just, well, what goes here, what goes here,
Yeah.
and then
Keeps it very live.
I think when I was first brought into Dance Bear Dance, it was as someone who, working with Gemma on Invitation to the Beheading, it was someone who had experience of coming up with text for a devised show, because the previous thing, brilliant Bobby Francois, and also really brilliant tennis show, there wasn't really much text, but because this was going to be a council meeting and that this was going to be a much more text heavy show than they'd done before, which, at least I think, as Gemma told me, is one of the reasons I've been invited to come in as early as I did on it. And I think definitely something I literally brought to the table in Shunt was an idea of how to create text that worked within an immersive environment that wasn't just like delivering a lecture, say, like how you present information to an audience and give them the information to present to audience back as well. And you play games, and one of the best bits about the devising process was just every hour, go away, come up with something to present. And the presentations are so important. And when they were doing the cabaret, that was also people would present a thing, a scene.
Yeah, just make the work and see.
Yeah,
see
yes,
where
it was
goes, see how
very much
lands.
that improv thing of just do it and then let's see.
Yeah. And I'm going to try and pick up on quite a few things, and we see where we go here. So I think it's really interesting. I mean, I guess it's always been within performance, but there's emphasis, first of all, on audience or audience experience, and second of all, where the audience and the performer is within the space. And this idea that, and actually it's influenced my more recent work around, well, the show starts immediately, or in fact, my last show, it even starts when you're not in the space, within the bar.
Yeah.
I'm speaking to people, you're inviting them in, you're already telling them about what it is, and then you're invited and go through the space. And I've been very, very much more interested in how much the audience has agency within a space, as opposed to in a very traditional, or some traditional, where the audience just sits and watches something, although you go further back and they were always kind of rowdy. And I'm kind of interested in how your line of work here thinks about having an audience pay attention, how you think about audience within space. And I mean, maybe you can do this with reference to your latest work, or even some of the Shunt work, with how that works in terms of thinking about the audience, where they're not simply a passive piece of the performance, but a more active piece.
Yeah, it's obviously about that, but I guess where I become where I get antsy is I don't want to start, as I hear often, suggesting that a passive audience is unengaged.
Mm-hmm. To do with
at
attention.
all.
Yeah.
Well, not even that. Attention, yeah.
Yes,
not. I
right.
thought you said tension.
No, yeah.
But yeah, no. I mean,
attention.
all
Engagement.
all art's kind of about holding someone's attention, and I think so much of it for me, in terms of the doing immersive work, is you're doing this every night. For me, it's really about making the experience I'm going through night after night, a proper experience. Like, and that means different from the one before.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was thinking about this on the way here, because I'm thinking about making a second solo show finally after Jonah. And what I'd forgotten, one of the things I loved writing about it, and when I took it to Edinburgh last year, and all the things I was refining about it. But one thing I hadn't really, at least I don't remember acknowledging, is how it's so much a show about a performer in a space. It's what I'm doing in a space. It's about a person in a space with an audience, and that, which sounds kind of redundant, but really, when I was thinking about what to do next, I realized, my problem is I don't know the way in, because sort of everything I wanted to play with about the idea of what it is to go into a room and then have someone talk at you was there in Jonah. And so I'd be thinking about, maybe the character of this new piece will be sat at a table and it'll be a date. And I'm like, but that's... So you're losing something. It's about the less I have to pretend, the better. Unless there are bits where I suddenly really do have to pretend, and that's a great bit. So although the audience never may be conscious of this, when I'm in the whale and there's just a blue spotlight, there's loads of bits, like theatre is happening in front of you. And I am covered in stuff, and I am playing a person in the belly of a whale, and I love it, and that's something mystical going on. But I always thought a theatre's like a church, and a church is set up a bit like an aeroplane, and just all these spaces where an audience come in, and that's the contract, and they understand the contract, and you can play with the contract. But that's also something I don't have to pretend.
Yeah,
that allows me to come in and be as alive as possible in front of them in this show, in the same way that with Shunt, where we had these incredible spaces designed by Lizzie, you could just come in and play that game in that space. What do you want to do in that space with those people? It was a huge inspiration. And so I was, I think this was inspired by, I caught a bit of a documentary about Punchdrunk last night on Sky. And I've never seen a Punchdrunk show, but someone was saying about, the audience coming in and they're in a space, but also that space has been designed. Like, that's just pretending. I was like, and this, I don't want to detract from their incredible work because I've never seen it, but I was just like, it's just a set. You're just walking around a set. What's interesting about being either sharing a space with someone and realizing that, maybe if I do go to Edinburgh with a show, it should be in Edinburgh. It should be a promenade thing. I do Jack the Ripper walks. Mm-hmm. And my friend Ben Whitehead, who came up with them, also came up with the Ghostbusters tours. And I've worked at Phantom Peak. And so many of my day jobs are within a space, relate to a very specific space. So and I really, really need that. I really need to go, look at this stuff behind me. Look where we are.
Yes.
And so Jonah was really good because it was about people coming to listen to a man in a box.
And that's where the label immersive is slightly mislabeled in that sense, right?
No, it's why it's not. Well, it's why I think you can call it an immersive work, even though it's an audience watching a person on stage. That's why I think it is an immersive piece.
Oh, so I guess I was saying that, for instance, a Jack the Ripper walk is immersive in a way that people might not think it's immersive.
Yeah, well, but although I mean, everyone knows you're walking around the streets. Well, I don't know anyone who.
Yeah, I guess.
I think if you say you don't use it as immersive theatre because you haven't created the space. Although I think normally immersive suggests to me
a creation of a space.
Yeah, and it's some form of installation,
and which isn't just a set. That's the.
Well, I mean, it can't help but be a set. But I think, I guess, like I was watching the footage of Punchdrunk, and they go, you've walked into a fake bathroom, and it's like, well, how. And again, it's this dreadful because I haven't seen the show, but it's like, how interesting is it ultimately to walk into a fake bathroom? And yet, and this is the thing I had to deal with, I love theme parks. And that's just walking around a created environment.
Yeah, but they're very honest. It's like, if you're not pretending to be a bathroom, you're not. Theme parks aren't pretending to be something other. So if you get a very detailed piece of set which is trying to be naturalistic but somehow misses a thing, and then feels like, it's because you're not the very best fake bathroom.
But that's not the problem for me, because everyone makes mistakes. It's about the intention.
I see.
I think if you're making a space, from scratch, why make a space that already exists? Why one of the reasons I love Disneyland is that Walt Disney made a thing that doesn't exist.
Only exists, yeah. Imagination on
It's such a realization of his very specific idea of what is good, which you don't have to agree with at all, but it's absolutely, he lived there as it was being made.
Yeah, it's a real. Okay,
here's Main Street USA, and there's a steamboat, and there's a mountain, and there's the Wild West, and there's the Africa. There's all of Africa in a boat ride. Although that came later, I think.
And then even more amazing, it's like, and maybe he's the only one who could envisage that to make it.
Yeah,
so it becomes a singular vision. Yeah, That's
why David Hockney said he's the most important artist of the 20th century. And you go, oh yeah, of course he is. But it's a very singular vision of a space, and so, but also I do love walking around fake environments.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it was about that bit of the documentary.
Yeah. It's not just artifice; it's something else.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure I'd find it huge fun to see one of their shows, and I guess that's what got me thinking about.
If it's not too controversial, I'm interested that you haven't been to a Punchdrunk.
Well, they used to be too expensive.
Okay,
but I was also thinking about this when I was watching the bit of the documentary, going, well, why am I going to see the Punchdrunk show? And I think I would be too scared of not enjoying it.
And in some ways, I think maybe it's not quite fair to say, but I would say Punchdrunk. There's an argument saying some of Punchdrunk couldn't have existed without some of the stuff that Shunt and Shunt adjacent work had done earlier.
I mean, having not seen it, I wouldn't say that. I think because I think there's a huge creative crossover.
Yes, and obviously
really
we see creativity in a milieu. It's not,
but if so, I guess there was a similar thing going on. When they started the BAC, they were using the BAC.
Yeah,
the BAC was an incredible building, and they were using it. And I think that's huge fun. And I think similarly, when Shunt moved into underneath London Bridge, it's like, well, what do we do with this? And I think the approaches to space are very different, and the approaches to how to put a show in a space. Like I was talking to Jonah about this, and like Shunt sort of made clown installation. There's something very absurdist about it, and one of the great things about absurdism is it can be done quite cheaply because there's a slight post-apocalyptic sense of the comedy of scarcity.
On clowning, I had a very short clown question, which is: should a clown always say yes?
Oh, I mean, yeah, that's a very interesting question, but it's not interesting because I feel I have to answer it.
You don't have to.
But it's one of the things that put me off when I was in 20s and I was doing clown school. It's like, yeah, but I like Phil Silvers. I don't think... I like... This is a talent I'm rediscovering. Dylan Moran. I just rewatching Black Books ago. Yeah, well, Dylan Moran's not... But it's a hugely negative figure. But also there's a real innocence to him. When he falls in love, there's... Even if you're saying no, you're saying yes to no. You're really...
Yeah.
You're developing it, but just that, just to be given that lesson, because the very first time I heard that was a weekend workshop with Angela De Castro, which is the only clowning I've done. It's such an important question, which is why it's an interesting one. Because also like Jonah is like Hamlet was my investigation of refusing the call to adventure.
Yes.
Like I did my English dissertation on the early work of Woody Allen, who again is like there's 3 films in a row about political assassination with a clown who doesn't want to go along with it. So obviously a clown can refuse a mission.
You get other absurdist things which happen from it. I was interested in your audio work, which I'm going to come to as well as a kind of on a separate strand and how it feeds in. But before that, I was just going to pick up on the BAC, the space, the Shunt, and things.
Yeah.
Because at the same time as that was happening, and I'd been theatre blogging a little bit around there as well, there was an ongoing argument from a more traditional writing school, which had or theatre school, which had put the writer first. So you have a writer first, a well-made script, you get a director
Yeah.
and actors, and you put things on. Versus an ensemble school, of which we touched on various ways that you could do that. And I thought it was a really, someone who was a young sort of theatre, I guess I was a theatre maker, but I wasn't doing it full time. I had a whole other job, and still was making some bits of theatre. I found that was a really exciting argument, which was played out in performances. It was played out over blogs. And I guess still to some degree plays out now. You know, David Eldridge, who was from very much the writer school, has got some great stuff on at the moment. But I'd be interested if you had any reflections on, did you feel that was an ongoing debate then, and how that fits into the liveliness of theatre now?
I think the only stakes of that debate, really, were that theatre critics were suddenly being sent to things that they had no experience of writing about.
Yeah, interesting.
I think it was that.
Okay. Was this almost
it's like, I'm a theatre critic, and I'm watching. I don't know how to process the thing I'm watching because it's not the job I signed up for.
Interesting. Okay.
I'd already gone through that. I mean, my experience of watching Jeremy's King Lear was like, but one of the things was also really great about that was because here was a student. We was at Cambridge. Here was a student who was not trying to be a journeyman director. He was using the resources that we had to try something new, and it killed, and it completely transformed or broadened my idea of what doing a show could be. And it wasn't just an idea; it was the brilliance of the execution. It was that Jeremy was so good at that, and I think that's a hugely important part. It wouldn't have happened if he wasn't so good at that. Yeah. Sometimes, as we were talking about, you make the thing that doesn't exist. Yeah. Like there are people, you know, often the best artists are artists who are good at something that doesn't exist.
Yeah, and
who are brilliant at something that doesn't exist. And so they make the thing and then it exists.
And the critics didn't understand it at the time.
Yeah, and then you have it's the opening credits to. Do you know Nicholas Craig, the Nigel Planer character?
Tiny bit, yeah.
There's the opening credits to his the Naked Actor show is such a perfect sort of snapshot of black box, him in different costumes doing things, and some science fiction and some. But the point I'm getting at is someone brilliant will come along and do something completely new, and people go, "Oh, there's this," and then a whole bunch of people who don't really get it at all will come along and go, "Oh, now we're doing this." And you go, well, if you don't do it, if you don't get it, and that sort of theatre of the 70s and 80s, which has huge talents doing incredible stuff, but also the sense that quite a few directors were coming along in their 20s and going, "Oh, this is what theatre looks like now," and you go, "But you don't." Okay, but whatever. But like an idea of what theatre should be is not theatre.
Yeah,
you can do whatever you like. That's the point. What is it you want to do? That to me is what theatre is. And so, I think what annoyed me and some of us in Shunt was the idea that we were doing this because we couldn't do text.
Right.
It was like, no, we've done text.
Yeah.
We fucking kicked Shakespeare's ass. And now we want to see what else we can do.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily a transferable skill. But again, we'll come back to that idea. The main attraction is that you're doing it night after night. So you're doing something slightly different.
Yeah.
And so I don't have that much experience of a long run of a play.
Yeah.
I really don't. And that's not because I don't want to. And I want to get back to that. But yeah, that in the first half of my adulthood, it's been mainly devised work, all very short runs of comedy.
Things. And maybe now it'd be interesting to touch on your audio work. Do you think audio work is essentially your form of theatre as well? I mean, you don't necessarily have a set or a space, although you can definitely engage or have an audience pay attention. You don't necessarily get the feedback from that. Do you see it as a separate strand, or is it just more technical using as your voice?
It's I think my main there's lots of stuff I'm not good at with voice work, which I've been doing a lot of. But what I'm good at sight reading, and I'm good at making quick decisions that aren't dumb. I also really enjoy working with other people. So most of my voice work that people will know is in a sketch show called John Finnemore's Souvenir program, where you get to do a lot of voices and choose characters very quickly, and it allows me to mimic some old school kind of acting, because a lot of John's sketches deal in old school genres. But John's a brilliant performer and a brilliant writer, and everyone in the company is a brilliant performer and brilliant writer, so I'm very happy just sitting and listening. But that kind of work, and then the work I've been doing with Audible and with Big Finish, it's making quick decisions and letting them play out. The thing that always... And also when I was doing John's show, that's the first sketch work I did, so I wasn't a sketch comedian. And sort of a bit like talking about devising, I didn't have a default persona that I could just bring to a sketch, and that I didn't have a default voice. Like, but both John and I had been writing for David Mitchell and Robert Webb, and David has a very clear default voice where you could just play it. I didn't have that, and I certainly hear that in the first two series going, well, I don't know what I am. if I'm not playing a specific character, I don't know. I'm a little awkward about that. I can't
and it's
remember
your quick decisions.
Oh, sorry.
Quick and good decisions.
Yeah.
Are they because you did a lot of improv work, a bit of that, or is it just come more
I
naturally?
I'm just grew up. I'm very happy at pretending. I just like I like that games. I like it's the storytelling thing, and I don't always make the right decisions. There are jokes I don't get. The thing that I guess when that became a thing that I was doing regularly. Acting is reacting. You can't react in voice work.
Yeah.
I mean, I did occasionally went, but like listening to people, the thing I enjoy a lot about acting, you just don't do on the radio. But then you're reading a script, so you're not even looking at the other performer. Your eyes are basically always on the words. But it's a really nice thing to come in and have recorded. But it's a complete It's absolutely. It's at the far end of the pretending to be other people spectrum.
Yeah, that's fair. And what do you find exciting, or the other side challenging about performance today? Maybe we could say London theatre performance, but you might have views globally or just about performing arts or culture.
You mean as
general.
an audience?
Either
in terms of me watching stuff, or
either watching or even doing, because you can choose it from either. Maybe in terms of doing actually. And like, I could frame it as a couple of thoughts I had. I had thought that maybe the pandemic might change things more than they have. I mean, we've got back to a state where I don't think it's maybe changed that much. I mean, the little bits around, but that's kind of interesting. I still think there's a big question mark on how we approach digital work, although I think we're becoming more interesting. Still, I feel.
What do you mean by digital work?
So digital work is essentially I'm kind of thinking about digital work as digitizing live work, or putting the digital like video, or partly archiving, or a little bit. So your YouTube or performing Shakespeare is a kind of form of digital work, right?
Yeah.
So that
absolutely,
rather than just video cameraing a national theatre stage. So that's one element. Or you go the other way where I think Katie Mitchell's done more of this work, or there's been others around it, where you have much more digital within your live performance, so using video and things. That's maybe one end of the spectrum of where digital could land. We'll see what these LLMs, AIs bring or not to the process. So I'm interested in what you find exciting, either from a performance view, or indeed it could be on the other side in terms of watching, and also what you kind of feel is challenging or boring, or is like we should really just do less of that and do more of something else.
I don't necessarily find anything as a performer exciting, otherwise I go and do it. Again, I was thinking on the walk here how much easier it was making a show like Jonah when I had so many friends and contemporaries who were also making works in small rooms and presenting me with options to copy or be inspired by. And now I'm seeking it. I'm still seeking out not beginning artists, but artists working in that space, and I'm really excited by their work. I've met a few people who are doing just brilliant stuff in a way that brilliant stuff has always been brilliant. But less that I can take away and go, oh, I want to do that.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons I made Jonah, was I wanted people to watch it and go, oh, I could do something like that. Yeah. I like, that's another thing I like about the affordability of a piece of theatre. And as an audience, like the last 3 big shows I've seen, 2 at the Globe and then 1 at the National, I've all really loved. I saw Pinocchio. I saw a fantastic Troilus and Cressida, which is not something I thought I would see. And then I sat at the front row for the Bacchae, which I think is the place to see it. I know people have sat further back, had a very different experience of it. But everything that went into it seemed so engaged in what they were making, and the idea that it should be fun, but that fun's not an embarrassing. Made by people who get fun, made by people who seem to genuinely be able to have fun.
Yes.
And communicate that, but that not be done incredibly intelligently and argumentatively as well, presenting an argument. And that's a run of 3 of those is not something I'm used to.
Pretty good.
British
theatre's okay then.
I really came away from Pinocchio thinking, yeah, everything's fine. People get it. Don't overthink it, but do think it and have fun and be fun. And don't. Fun's not a genre. A lot of things are feelings that you genuinely want to inspire in people, and they're not, and then they're not a genre. You can't fake it. It's working out. What in the medium you have to fake, and what in the medium you shouldn't fake. And I think I've never really had that much respect for criticism, because I always think it lets people get away with absolute murder.
Well, we'll come to that when we do a little bit of underrated, overrated. But maybe the last one on this on this one for now. Okay. Yeah. Well, we'll try. We'll see how it goes. Those are recent pieces which are all done well. I was wondering if there are any particular pieces, either that you've seen or maybe that you've been in. I hadn't really thought about that. Which have stayed with you in the sense that you come back to it from time to time. So actually, Dance Bear Dance is one of those. I'm not saying I think about it every month, but I'd probably say once a year something comes along and reminds me of either the feeling of the piece, or that's kind of like, this is something there. I mean, there's a few other pieces for me, and it might not even be theatre. It could be. I mean, I sometimes have it on visual work or words or things. But I'd be interested if there is a piece of performance, either as an audience or as a performer, where maybe once a year or something it refloats back in your mind and kind of oh yeah, this has influenced how I think about the world or art.
There are lots, but I can't nothing immediately comes to mind. But when I had a brilliant PR for Jonah non Grato, which is a 20-year-old show that I did at Edinburgh last year, and I had to write a lot of pieces about it, and so it was interesting to me, at least, going, what did inspire it? Where did that idea come from? And some of it was books by Alistair Gray and all the idea of Stanley Spencer, and the idea of, the importance of religious art, even as an atheist, just how handy that is, dealing with old stories. But if I think of when I was in Edinburgh, I started rewatching a lot of National Theatre of Brent, and I'll happily put forward that. Do you know the National Theatre of Brent? Desmond Olivier Dingle, and then Jim Broadbent, and up into Raymond Box. And I was rewatching them going, oh no, this is really influential. Not even they're a comedy duo, but also the low fineness, but the fact that within this joke, the human scale they gave to history, which is often missing from how history is talked about, was so genuinely pertinent and moving, and I loved the cleanness of that idea, and I loved just the clownness of it, and I loved, we are going to stage the biggest thing imaginable, but we don't have the resources. So it's not something I've seen live. I watched a lot of television. Black Books. I've been watching Black Books just because I thought it was about time, and everything Dylan Moran does. I don't. Again, this isn't necessarily talk about. I just go, oh yeah, I really. That informed me so much.
I haven't rewatched it recently, but it's probably been a series that I've watched.
Even
It's
before
definitely
Black
top
Books,
10,
when he was doing "How Do You Want Me," just his performance.
Yeah, I think I saw it in Edinburgh. Yeah,
but that doesn't really. Like it does sort of when a lot of my writing for Mitchell Webb was sort of inspired by the way Dylan Moran wrote. So there's one sketch about Queen Victoria where this is sort of David Mitchell rant, and I thought I wasn't intentionally writing a David Mitchell rant, but it was a Dylan Moran rant that David Mitchell then said, and then it sounded like a David Mitchell rant. But again, so yeah, television is a huge influence, and that's, I guess, why when I'm doing theatre, it's based on stuff that isn't screenable.
Yeah. Okay.
It's based on being with the audience.
Great. Well, let's do a little bit of overrated, underrated, and then into the last couple of questions on current projects or any advice. So I'm going to say a short thing or word, and you can say whether you think it's an underrated thing or an overrated. I guess things can be correctly rated as well, whether we want more of or less of. So I'll start with one which we touched on.
At what point in this should I say I'm absolutely against ratings?
Well,
at the beginning.
Well, we could say
because everyone likes different things.
Right. Well, this would
I
be
think
underrated.
rating. I think I'm really like. I think in print, I think criticism has stakes with the employee,
Yes.
and so I don't necessarily trust that people who say they like stuff in print necessarily like stuff. But I think outside the media, outside journalism, just like in personal interactions, if someone likes something, they like it.
Yeah. Oh, I don't mean in terms of that sort of rating. So I'll see. So like whether we want something more of less. So I would say reviews and criticism.
Right.
And you're saying we should probably have less of it.
Well, no, but
it's
we
about
got
the right amount.
now it's a zero. It's not a zero-sum game, is it?
No, it's not. It could be.
It's no. I mean, dear God, I got some amazing write-ups from Jonah and like genuinely amazing. Not like, oh, I've won this prize, but like, oh, you got it. Oh, and you taught me something about my show. So if you try, I don't just try to see the good in stuff in a kind of self-policing way. I try and see the good in stuff because why wouldn't you find good stuff?
Sure.
It benefits your life to find the good in it. But I'll try to not answer the question.
Yeah. And what about the Arts Council? Do you think we should have more of it or less of it?
I've never had interactions with the Arts Council.
Neutral.
I don't understand. Well, not even neutral. I don't understand. I mean, maybe more. I'm very okay. I've never. One of the reasons I've never applied to Arts Council funding
is a good thing.
State funding for art, lottery funding, less so. I think that's why I've never applied. I've always like poor people gambling, funding me. And also, I'm a very privileged person. I went to Cambridge. I've I should be able to find a way to make a thing. Okay.
Yeah, get it. Yeah, exactly. Well, this is my question.
Not that I don't rate myself, and not that I don't think I've been around long enough to deserve a bit of that pot now. But I think I really like with the blog. I blog. I don't do Substack, and the lack of a financial incentive makes it much easier for me to do what I want.
Well, so I've done the same. Done it up. So podcast, never going to be commercial. Yeah. My blog, actually, it is on Substack, but only because they email it out. Never going to be commercial.
Well, yeah.
And then
that's
my
a
same,
good idea.
and then my same with my work was gone. So my very very early work, I did get some Arts Council money, but then I didn't have any money then. Now I do have money. I wouldn't never say never. But I don't foresee a path where I would take Arts Council money. There's just an interesting legitimate question about what level you do arts funding, particularly in this country where you want to fund the NHS, you want to fund education, and
there's
things
so
like
much
that.
money in this country. I mean, if you see what we do give money to, take whatever money they're giving.
Yeah.
I think now, really, my feeling about it is not what it was 25 years ago.
Yeah. That's fair
enough.
enough.
Have you seen what they're giving money to? If they want to give some to you, take it.
Yeah. Okay, and the last one on this, influence of Netflix. Do you think it's more influence, less influence? Do you think it's been a good thing, bad thing, or just
On
a thing?
what?
On, I guess, writing and performance culture, stories maybe broadly. So I guess there's one argument that it has brought us more stories and more funding, and maybe more global stories and more funding. And then there is also, I guess, a critical argument saying it is maybe narrowed us. It's also taken away attention from other forms, arguably social media and things are the worst. But there is that sort of argument as well. And then there's in the middle. So
I don't know. I need some actual stats.
This is just vibes.
Yeah, because like sometimes something can get an audience that's not taking away someone else's audience. That's actually like building an audience for that. This is a non-answer, but one of the things that intrigues me is how just before the Me Too movement started, like two of my favorite shows on Netflix were Jessica Jones and Kimmy Schmidt. And there were all these massive narratives being made about a woman living in a nightmare world completely controlled by an evil man. And and yeah, when that time, so that would have been 2016, I think 2015. It was brilliant to see such huge narratives that then played out. It is extraordinary that Netflix has no money and just keeps spending more and more money.
A lot of
I don't understand how that works. I still watch iPlayer. I do stream more than I watch television, but I watch a lot of YouTube. I watch a lot of YouTube channels.
Yeah.
Although
you have a favorite?
Yeah, I have a few favourites. A few of my favourites don't exist anymore. They've gone on to, is it Nebula? And there is a real gender divide by who stayed on YouTube and who's been driven off. Theme parks. I love all theme park YouTube. Defunctland doesn't do much now, but was an incredible channel. Jenny Nicholson was incredible.
Do you have a favourite theme park?
Ellis.
I've been to a couple more
there's
recently.
only Disneyland.
Every theme park is a great theme park.
But yeah, not every, but I do just love theme parks. But Disneyland is absolutely my favourite. I went as a kid. I went to Epcot at exactly the right time. It was for those who don't know, it was sort of a futurist series of rides in the 80s where like futurism was still really, really exciting. There'd be underwater schools, and you can go on. I think you can go on YouTube and see a version of this ride, Horizons, which was as responsible as anything for me thinking about the future up until I realised what the future would actually be like, and that you can't see underwater because light doesn't travel, which is a huge disappointment. And so I follow. I really enjoy Red Letter Media. Again, it's really interesting to see people who have started off just putting stuff on YouTube and then have thrived very much within their own scale. So these now middle-aged friends in, is it Milwaukee, getting together and watching terrible films and getting drunk and talking about them. That is now a business model. Map Men, I love.
You couldn't have done
essays.
that without all of that. I mean,
there's
putting that on the BBC.
Yeah, there's no way. And Vlogbrothers, both, John and Hank Green, I think, although
and it's a great
Hank's videos are now more than 5 minutes long. I don't follow them so much, but the people who I was really interested where suddenly anyone could be a presenter in what they chose to present.
And it gives you a real slice of humanity, even human flourishing. I think it's a form of human flourishing. Okay, last couple of questions because we're running up in time. So one is current projects. Any current projects that you're working on, current or future projects that you'd like to?
Yeah,
I'm
going back to. I'm writing. Am I? Yeah, no,
is this
I am
Jonah
writing
part
a
two?
book. No, a book. A
Oh.
children's book. The first show I took to Edinburgh was the first three an adaptation of the first three chapters of a book, which at the time was the whole story, but it was never meant to be the story. And then someone said, "Oh, that's the story." I went, "Oh, yeah." It was because it's a sort of a hero's journey. It's called Princess Plimsoll, but now I realised I wanted it to be a proper children's short novel, and so I'm now thinking about that, and it involves thoughts about theatre and stories and lies and fantasy and but it's also just really, really fun to think about and occasionally write. I won't make the self-appointed deadline for getting a draft done by the end of this month. But and that's an unpaid project, but that's what I'm writing on. And so we're towards the end of January now, thinking about whether or not to go to Edinburgh with another show. I've got 2 in mind as starting points, but now I'm thinking about venue and how important that is. That's sort of completely reaffected, and it all starts with, as you said, at what point does the audience start feeling like they're in the show?
Yeah.
I
want
an audience to be excited, and I want to maintain that feeling of excitement.
And do you think that's because it's something particular about an Edinburgh audience, or why wouldn't you do it in a London venue somewhere?
Because Edinburgh has that's a really good question. I guess because that's how we're taught to think.
Yeah, okay. Fair.
But also because you can win prizes in Edinburgh. I mean, like if you want to go, oh, actually, I'm a theatre maker.
Yeah. I've got a Fringe
That's
first,
where you.
That's
the deadline you set yourself. That's the best place to show new work.
Yeah.
Even though I've logged read every month. I go, well, I live in London. I don't need Edinburgh. But yeah, it's different. It's just you have to think now. Am I going to do Edinburgh? I haven't done a big advert that can definitely pay for it, so probably not. And I'm just moving to a new flat, so I mean financially it does take a bite.
Yeah.
Unless I do free Fringe and I do something, that's another way. That's another thing to think about. Who am I going up there with?
Just to say, most people may not realise that the vast majority of Edinburgh shows don't make any. In fact, lose money. Not only do they not make money, that they will lose money.
Oh, do they? Yeah. If you don't know that, yes. Yeah.
Tens of thousands. That sort of magnitude.
Yeah. I lost 10,000, and that goes on your rent while you're up there because there's a lot of rent, and it goes on a producer if you have a producer, and it goes on a PR if you have a PR, which is a good idea, and. What else? Other things.
Well, it depends on how many people you got to pay for actors and set and things.
Oh yeah. If
shows,
it's not just you, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you have to pay for technicians. Yes, certainly, yeah.
Okay, well that sounds a great range of current projects, and then obviously audio work and other things.
Yes,
running by.
That keeps coming up.
Do you have any advice for maybe wannabe creatives, or you could have life advice in general? I guess you've had a portfolio career of different parts of creativity across everything. I don't know. Have you reached the stage where you would offer any thoughts to?
No, I think I've been offered that. I mean, get out, see work you like, meet the people who make work that you like. Do stuff on purpose. That's harder and harder these days. Doing because it's so easy.
Purpose it's an intentional thing.
Yeah,
you're doing,
it's so easy. Like because I have a lot of time off, and I might just click the next thing on my algorithm, and it's different to go. No, what is it you actually want to do?
Yeah. Okay.
Watch something on purpose, not because you're in a position where you're watching things and you want to go. Well, I could watch this next. Like, I don't know. That's maybe something more for my generation. Maybe people deal with stuff easier. Yeah, I've got. I mean, you can by other devices. You can do anything. Yeah. There are a lot of dialogues about or conversations about what is it you can do. It's like, well, see. Yeah. See what you can do, and I've been very lucky to be surrounded by creatives who really do stuff that I never saw exist before. But I even before that knew that was a common factor in a lot of stuff I loved was that it was stuff that was being done for the first time. So I shouldn't imitate it. I would see who's doing stuff I've never seen before. I really like that. That seemed like an obvious idea once I'd seen it, and work out what's going on there. And have fun.
Yeah. Oh, well, that sounds amazing. Have fun. Do things with purpose. Make things which haven't existed before. Great set of advice. Well, with that, Simon, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben.